Welcome to the third session of Christmas Made Easy. My name's Xanthe Clay and I'm the food columnist here at the Telegraph. And this evening I'm going to be showing you my recipe for a Christmas cake, but it is a special Christmas cake because it's got quince and hazelnuts and sloe gin and all sorts of kind of gorgeous kind of autumnal Christmassy flavours in it. And I'm going to show you right from making the cake through to the decoration. It's an awful lot to pack in and it's a really complicated recipe, so I'm quite nervous. So really hoping that it all goes well, and bear with me. I'm going to try and get to your questions as much as I can, but if I miss any, you can always email me afterwards at xanthe.clay@telegraph.co.uk. Great, so let's get going. And we're going to start with the star of the piece, which is a quince. I'm just going to set my timer going so that I can try and make sure I run to time. Let's see. Quince. Do you all know what a quince is? It's a fruit, a little bit like a pear, but it never softens, so you can eat it raw. You always have to cook it to eat it. It's got the most amazing fragrance. They're a very traditional British fruit, but they kind of fell out of favour and they were really hard to find for ages. But now, thanks to the trend for Middle Eastern food, they're getting much, much easier to find, which is great. You probably won't find them in your supermarket. You're better off going to a greengrocer's, or best of all, to a shop which run by a Middle Eastern family or an Indian family, or one of the one of our wonderful ethnic minorities. They tend to be great sources of all sorts of fantastic ingredients, but especially the quince. Quince. Right, now they are a bit of a pain to prepare, and they sometimes have a sort of funny fur on them. So what you want to do first is wash them to get rid of that fur. And then you chop them in half. They can be a bit hard, so use a decent knife. And then inside, just like a pear, they've got a core. So I'm just going to cut that out. I've got this really cool kind of coring device, but you could use a melon baller, or you can just use a knife. But the thing to do is, it's going to be a bit hard for you to see, but they can be a little bit gritty at the middle, and you'll be able to see when you're doing it. And just cut out enough of that grittiness around the core so you don't forget that. And then you just want to cut out that bit. They are quite hard, so do be really careful not to cut yourself because they're quite hard, and it is a bit too easy to cut yourself. Okay, and then chop out the other bit. What you don't need to do is skin them. Now, I always peeled them, and if you look at some of my older recipes online, you will say I said to peel them, because I kind of thought you did, because my mother always did, and we always do with what we kind of grew up with, don't we? And then a reader wrote to me and said, this is nonsense. You don't need to peel them, because unlike pears and unlike apples, when you cook a quince, the peel goes completely soft and sort of melting. So there's just no need to peel it. And given that quinces are quite expensive, I think it kind of makes sense to use every scrap that you can. So you can leave that peel right on. Okay, so I'm just going to chop that, and we're going to cook this quince a little bit, well, quite a lot actually, to make it really soft and taste amazing. And it's really that long, slow cooking that brings out the flavour of the quince and also turns it this glorious sort of deep amber colour, which I completely love. So I've just chopped it into kind of 2 or 3 centimetre pieces in a pan. Ta-da. Then I'm going to add 75 grams of sugar. You do need a bit of sugar with quince, which kind of brings out the flavour as well as being sweet in it. But let's face it, Christmas cakes are not sugar-free. So that's 75 grams of sugar and about 300 mils of water. You can add a little more if you think it's a bit thin, but that should be fine. I don't know if you can see in there. Okay, and that just goes on the stove, and we're going to simmer that for, just check that I stay with the hint sheet. I think what I said is simmer it for an hour, and then simmer it for an hour with the lid on, and then take the lid off and keep on simmering it until it turns this amazing dark sort of tawny colour, and it gets quite sticky. Now, the other thing I should do as well when I cook it, which I forgot to say, and you don't have to do this, but it's a really good tip when you're cooking quince, is to keep all of the trimmings and put them, you can either wrap them in a bit of muslin, but I use, this is one of those bags you get fruit in from a greengrocer sometimes, and they're made out of some kind of nylon stuff. Anyway, they're really brilliant for using for tying things up, which you want to then fish out of the pan later. A bit like our grannies would have used a bit of muslin, but it kind of appeals to me that I can reuse this. So I've just put all the bits in there, and all of those trimmings are the bit of the fruit that's really rich in pectin, and that will help thicken the juices and make it really kind of jammy and delicious. So I'm going to simmer that in the pan along with the grated zest of half a lemon and a vanilla pod, just to give it lots of yummy flavour. In the pan it goes, and when it's done it looks like this, and you can fish out the vanilla pods. I've obviously got a bit over the top. I think I put 2 in here, but 1 is fine. And you know that you don't need to throw those away now. You can just rinse those, put them to dry, and then you can use them again. And I usually just stick them in my sugar jar, where they'll just help give the sugar a really amazing flavour. So there we go. So that's our lovely quinciness there. Brilliant. So I'm going to put that on one side, and you can do that up to a week in advance and keep it in the fridge, because effectively you've kind of made a jam of it. It's like a quince jam. And if you can't get quince, you could use pear as well, in which case it won't need nearly so long to cook, and it won't turn that fantastic colour, but it'll still be yummy. So be fine. Okay, just put that to one side and just wipe my hands, which are a bit quincy. Okay. Just having a look to see if I can see any questions. Looking good. Hello Yorkshire. Hello Hudson. Hello Chepstow. Beautiful places. Fantastic. So, phew. Next up is the fruit. Next up, I want to prepare the pan actually. So I've got the oven on to warm to about 140. And I'm just going to line an 8-inch pan. I've got a circle of baking parchment on the bottom. You can also use this reusable stuff, which comes ready cut, which I really like because I'm really lazy and I don't like having to cut out circles out of baking parchment. This piece of baking parchment, though, is one I cut out before, and I washed it after I used it, and I hung it on the radiator to dry, and now I'm using it again. And you can totally do that with baking parchment until it disintegrates, and then you can't. So it usually lasts like maybe 2 or 3 days, and then you have to get rid of it. Or you can buy this kind of reusable stuff, which lasts forever. So I'm just going to use this to go around the edge. I just bought this from the supermarket. I bought it from Sainsbury's, but I'm sure other supermarkets have it as well. And Lakeland are brilliant sources for things like this. So I'm just using that to line it. And then, because the cake's going to be in the oven for quite a long time, it's quite dense, and you're trying to get all those flavours into the middle, all the heat into the middle to cook it. What you don't want is for it to burn on the outside while the heat's getting to the middle. So what we do is, I'm going to put it on a baking tray, which I have lined with 2 sheets of the Telegraph, obviously, yesterday's Telegraph. And I'm just going to wrap around the side with more paper. So it's just a single page, and I'm just going to wrap that round like that. Whoops, and I just need one other. Right, here we go. And I'm just going to wrap that round, and I'm just going to stick that with a little bit of masking tape. You could also tie it with string. I just find masking tape's a bit easier than trying to fiddle around tying string. So there we go. And that is just going to protect the outside of the cake from the heat a bit. It's just going to kind of insulate it a little bit. Okay. A little bit more. You could also use, triple layers of baking parchment as well, but it's quite expensive, baking parchment. And there's no reason to use it. Your paper is absolutely fine here. So just going to do that. So that's now wrapped in newspaper, lovely and protected, and I'm going to put that on one side, ready for when we come to baking. Okay, I put the oven on to heat. Excellent. How am I doing for time? Yeah, we're okay. So next off, I'm going to get the fruit going. So I've got lots of fruit here. what's the best way of doing this? I've got currants. You see the currants there. I tried making cake without currants. My daughter doesn't like currants. Lots of people don't like currants. As I'm sure you know, these aren't black currants. These are actually little tiny grapes, and they're called currants because they came from the city of Corinth in Greece originally, and that's where the word currant comes from. I tried making cakes without, and to me, it wasn't a Christmas cake then. It kind of, even though I'm not particularly wild about currants, it just didn't have the right flavour to be Christmas cake. It became just a sort of fruit cake. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'd love to see on the comments bar what you think a Christmas cake has to have in it to kind of make it a real Christmas cake rather than just a fruit cake. For me, I discovered it's currants. So I'm going to use currants. So 100 grams of currants. What else have I got? I've got some figs. I really like figs for Christmas, dried figs. That's just because I like them. But you don't have to put them in if you don't like them. But I kind of like that kind of slightly seedy texture they give. But, you know, it's not everyone's thing. And I just cut off the little hard little tip to the fig. And I'm just going to throw that away. And then I cut the figs into 3. What size you cut them is completely up to you. I like big bits, which is why I'm only cutting them into 3, but you could chop them much smaller so they're more like the size of a raisin if you wanted to. Right, what else? I have got some, I've got some apricots here. I've got the unsulfured apricots, which are brown. They're like this dark brown colour rather than the orange ones. I'm kind of 50-50 about whether I use the orange ones, which do look really pretty, or these unsulfured ones, which have the most amazing kind of fudgy, kind of toffee flavour. So, you know, can't decide. I like them both. And then I've got some sultanas. I'm going to have sultanas. Excellent. And, here are the orange apricots, in case you decide. There you go. So you could have orange or you could have the unsulfured ones. And what else have I got? Golden raisins. Now, again, you could use ordinary raisins. You don't have to use the golden ones, but I kind of think they lighten up the colour a little bit. And what I don't put in is glacé cherries because I don't like glacé cherries. And the thing about the fruit is as long as you use about 500 grams, you can use whatever you want, really, whatever mixture you want, whatever works for you. Instead of glacé cherries, I'm using just 50 grams because everything else I think is 100 grams, but just 50 grams of these little dried sour cherries, which just add a nice little tang, but they're quite expensive. So I think you'd have to really like them to want to put them in. But you could totally use glacé cherries instead, or dried cranberries if you wanted, or, there are all sorts of things that you can add. So, fantastic. I think that's all from that. Down there, so I'll be bobbing up and down. So what some people do with the dried fruit for some Christmas cakes is that it's soaked overnight in the booze, which is delicious. I love that. But I tried cooking Christmas cakes that way, and then I tried the other way, which is where it's based on what the Victorians used to call a boiled fruit cake, which is where you cook the fruit up and you cook it and then let it cool, and that sort of allows all the fruit to absorb all the kind of fruit juice, the lemon juice, the orange juice, using sloe gin, but you could use rum or brandy or whatever you want. And I found that gave a better texture for me. So that's what I'm going to do. And it sort of makes the cake a bit kind of moister. If you think of something like, because you're melting the butter, that changes the texture of the cake. So if you like gingerbread, for instance, like gingerbread cake, then you'll probably like your cake made like this. It makes it sort of moister. Horrible word, but you know what I mean, kind of mix it. I think yummier. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to grab a saucepan. This is one of those recipes where you use every single saucepan in the house. So here we go. Here's my saucepan. Brilliant. And just add in. So there go in my sultanas, my figs, my currants. Don't tell my daughter, she'll be appalled. She won't notice them once they're in there. My lovely yellow raisins. I think actually I'm going to use the orange apricots just because they're really pretty instead of the dark ones. And they're also a bit more tangy. So kind of depends what you want really. And we're going to add in the sour cherries as well. Brilliant. And then with that, and I think in the recipe I've said to melt the butter first, but it doesn't make any difference. You can melt the butter first, or you can do it like this, all in the pan, all in one go. So I've got 125 grams of butter. Just checking I don't forget anything, because that would be embarrassing. And I've got 125 grams of dark muscovado sugar here, which you could use light muscovado sugar as well, and that will just give you a lighter cake. Again, I quite like a Christmas cake that's got a little bit of darkness about it. But if you prefer a lighter cake, use light brown sugar or light muscovado, and that would be lovely as well. So that goes in as well. Then I am going to add the grated zest and juice of an orange. Haha, now I can't find my zester. 2 minutes while I find my zester. Here it is, found it. Phew. Okay, so it's going to whiz off the zest of this orange and see if there's any questions. Oh, someone's saying they love dried cranberries. Yeah, they're really nice, aren't they? And again, they add a sort of bit of zing to the flavour. Okay, so there we go. And just going to add the juice of the orange. Squish, squish, doesn't want to come out. So I'm going to use a juicer. Selching everywhere. Never mind. Yeah, if you're doing this at home, you will be making much less mess than me, that's for sure. I am a very messy cook. Yeah, never mind. It's all going to be fine. And then we're going to add the zest of a lemon. This is an unwaxed lemon, but if you're using a waxed lemon, then just give it a good scrub under hot water before you zest it, just to get rid of the layer of wax that's on there. It's not poisonous, but just probably don't want it in your cake. There we go, so zest in. I'm using a microplane to get my zest off. If you haven't got a microplane, if you use an ordinary grater, what I do is I wrap a piece of cling film around it first, and then grate through the cling film, and then peel off the cling film and use that to scrape the zest off. So scrape it off a piece of cling film, because it's so difficult to get the zest off from one of those box graters, isn't it? But I do think it's worth getting a microplane that is this shape, that's one of these long thin ones, as opposed to one of the paddle shaped ones, because they just seem to be better, and they sort of catch all the zest there. They're just easier to use. And they're the ones all the chefs use as well. And squeeze. Whoa. There we go. This lemon is a bit big for my lemon squeezer. Okay. Oh, okay, so there we go. In goes the lemon. And sloe gin. This is sloe gin made by some friends of ours. Delicious. You can also buy sloe gin, or if you haven't got sloe gin, I wouldn't worry. You could use brandy or whiskey or any other booze, but add just a couple of spoonfuls of sugar. And if you like, add a little bit of almond extract, because the thing about sloe gin is that if it's made with all the stones in, it gets, over the year that it macerates, it picks up this just little back note of almondiness, which is really delicious. So you could add a few drops of almond extract, not too much, or you could add a spoonful of amaretto as well if you wanted to. Okay, so this is 75 mils. My spoon is 30 mils, so that's 60 and a half. 75. And I'm just going to put that to heat gently so that that melts the butter, and then bring it to the boil it for 10 minutes. And that's just going to help all the fruit absorb all the deliciousness. And over here. Ta-da! And move that out of the way. You're going to need a little bit more of that to feed your cake at the end, so don't lose that. Right, and then when the fruit is done, it looks like this. Kind of all goopy, and it's kind of done that soaking overnight thing, but done it in a kind of 10 minutes instead of overnight. So it's quite handy that you can do it all in one. It tastes so delicious. Yum. So that's just there, and you just leave that to cool for a bit because you don't want it to be hot, hot, hot when you add the eggs. So next thing I'm going to do, just while that finishes cooling, is the other thing that I'm putting in this cake is I'm going to put a layer of quince cheese in. So a little bit like a simnel cake. You know those simnel cakes which have got marzipan in the middle, a layer of marzipan in the middle. This is going to be like that, but instead of the marzipan, it's going to be a layer of quince cheese. And quince cheese is that sort of jammy, quincy stuff, which is made by cooking down quinces. Now, you could make your own, which is fantastic. You can buy it often from cheesemongers. Sometimes they have it on the cheese counter in big kind of loaves, which you cut slices of. And that will work, that will be fine. They tend to be a bit lower in quince content, so they tend to melt a bit more into the cake. I found that this one's good. This is one from Waitrose, Membrio paste, and I use 2 blocks from there. There's also a really good one that the Fine Cheese Company make, which is fantastic as well. But look around. If you can't get it, doesn't matter, just leave it out. It's fine. It's fine. Ooh. Here we go. Also called quince paste or Membrio. That's absolutely right. Thank you, Pamela. Very true. Now I'm just going to find my bits of. Oh, there they are. There they are. Okay. So to get my quince cheese ready for the cake, I've got 2 slabs. So I've got, in my recipe, I've said about 200 grams. The bottom line is it doesn't matter exactly how much you put in there because it's like a layer in the middle. So 200 grams is fine. These are 120 grams, and I really like quince cheese, so I'm putting them both in, and that makes 140. And what I've got is a circle. No, it makes 240. Maths. I've got a circle of baking parchment here, which is 7 inches or 17.5 centimetres. So it's just a little bit smaller than the size of the cake. And I'm just going to squish this quince cheese out into a circle about that size. And I've made it slightly smaller because I want the quince cheese to be encased in the mixture. I don't want it to be kind of leaking out the sides and kind of burning or anything. So just going to press that down. There we go. Obviously, you could just, if you've got a plate or something that's this size, you could just press it out on the plate. I do think it makes it a bit easier to transfer, though, if it's on a bit of paper like this. And again, you can wash the paper and use it again. You don't have to throw it away. Or you can throw it away. Fine. There we go. Okay, so there you go. I've just squished it out into a rough circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. And that's ready. Let's quickly wash my hands. And having a look and seeing. Oh, what's the weight of the Membrio? It's I've said about 200 grams, but I actually put 240 in there because they are 120 grams each, these packs, and I just use 2 packs. But it's around 200, 250, that sort of amount is fine. And you could absolutely use homemade. That would be super delicious as well. How do you increase the quantities in proportion for a 10-inch cake? Oh gosh, I'd need to do the maths on that. But I think for 10 inches, you'd want to go about 1/3 bigger. So you'd want to go up by about 1/3, which I think would work because it's a 3/8 quantity. So that would work okay. But email me and I will check those figures for you. You'd also need to cook it for longer. It would take longer to bake. Okay, great. So now we are going to mix up everything. Okay, so I need my bowl. Here we go. And we are going to mix the quince, which, all right, where did I put the quince? Somewhere. It's somewhere. It'll turn up. Anyway, here's the, doesn't matter what order they go in. Oh, look. My lovely, lovely husband has found it where it was precariously balanced on top of something else. There we go. So there's all that fruit. Yummy and it smells so good. God. It smells like the best mince pie you could possibly imagine. Really lovely. And then in goes the fruit. which is going to add flavour, but it's also going to make the cake a bit sort of squidgier and yummier. Okay. And can you see actually how sticky the juices are from the quince? And that's partly because I did put the core and everything in, so I got all the pectin out when I was cooking it, and that was all in that bag, which I could then just take out and throw away. So I mix up all of that, and what else goes in? Oh yes, crystallized ginger. Yum, yum, yum. I really love ginger, so I'm putting ginger in my cake. Again, if you don't like ginger, don't put it in, but I'm trying not to eat the bits as I go because it looks really unprofessional. Okay, in goes the ginger. So 100 grams of crystallized ginger. This comes quite well chopped up. I got some from somewhere else the other day. Oh, here we go. The Waitrose one, which comes in really big bits. It's actually really nice ginger, but you might want to chop that up before you put it in, unless you want to have really huge chunks. You could also use those balls that come in syrup, but again, chop them up. They've got a slightly different texture, slightly firmer texture, but they'll work fine. So in goes the crystallized ginger. And then I've got some blanched hazelnuts. Where did I put those? So many things all over the place. Okay, the hazelnuts will turn up. Candied peel. Here we go, candied peel. I'm a bit ambivalent about candied peel. I found it really hard to get the big pieces of candied peel this year, and sometimes I make my own, but it's quite a big ask, what with all the other things you've got to do this year, to ask you to do that. So I have used this ready chopped stuff from the supermarket. It's not great, to be honest. I'd rather use the big stuff, but anyway, and chop that up myself, and that tends to have a better flavour. Or you can just leave it out, because remember, you've already got the orange and lemon zest in there. So you've really got some nice citrus going on. Then I got 50 grams of blanched hazelnuts. Ooh, and they are going in there. And I'm just leaving those whole because I really like that flavour, that kind of crunch you get from a whole nut in there. But again, you could chop them. I've used the blanched ones. When you blanch hazelnuts, so they come without their skins, they've already been toasted. Because that's how they get the skins off. They toast them in the oven and then they rub the skins off. But if you can only get the ones with the skin on, if you just toast them for about 10 minutes in a low oven, and then you'll be able to rub the skins off, and they'll still look white like this, but if you cut them open, they're actually brown and toasted in the middle, which makes them more delicious. If you're buying ahead of time, they last better untoasted. So once they're toasted, they tend to go rancid more quickly. So sometimes if you're laying in stores, it's better to lay in stores with the untoasted ones. Okay, so hazelnuts have gone in, candied peel have gone in, and I just need ground almonds, which I can get over there. Yay, brilliant. So I want 100 grams of ground almonds. Scissors, here we go. So, and ground almonds just give, again, they just make the cake a little sort of moister. And although I haven't made a gluten-free version of this cake, the fact that it's got so many ground almonds in makes me think that actually it would be completely fine made with a good gluten-free flour, and that would be absolutely terrific. So in go the ground almonds, and I'm going to add a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and I'm going to add some cinnamon. Sorry, just going off camera. Okay. Hello, I'm back. So I am going to grate the nutmeg from fresh because I think it's better that way. You couldn't get me some cardamom pods, could you? Thank you. It's not usually around, just helping me in the kitchen like this, but I'm totally up for it. Okay, so we're going for a really good teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg, which is so delicious. And cinnamon. I really like to grate my own cinnamon. This is a really cool present, actually, a cinnamon grater to give somebody who really loves cinnamon. Could you get me a pestle and mortar as well? I have to say, grating enough cinnamon for this cake does take quite a while. But when you grate your own cinnamon, you do get this amazing, amazing flavour. You could also use ready mixed ground mixed spice. The only thing I would say is, I mean, all of us, I can't be the only person who's got some sort of slightly aging bottles of spices on my shelves. For something like this, you really need to buy a new bottle, or at least one that you've only bought in the last kind of 3 months tops. The jar from last year won't be any good. Unground spices, whole spices, last really well, but once they're ground, they kind of lose their joy really quickly. There we go. So he's going to ground cinnamon, and then I'm going to add some cardamom, and you add 8 little pods of cardamom. And I would use whole cardamom pods here. I don't know what it is about ready ground cardamom. It's quite hard to find, and I think it's probably because it's just not very good. It isn't very good. It doesn't taste right. I think maybe they grind the whole lot with the pods as well or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, so I'm just going to give those a quick bash with, whoops, excuse me a moment, a pinch of salt. I once had worked with a chef, a French chef, who said that his grandmother had taught him that for everything sweet you add a pinch of salt, and for everything savoury you add a pinch of sugar. And I kind of think that's quite good advice. Just a little bit of salt will just bring out the flavours of everything in your cake. I'm using a fat pinch, and I'm sure you know this, but a fat pinch is 3 fingers together. It's what you can hold in 3 fingers. A normal pinch or a small pinch is what you can hold in just between 2 fingers. Okay. And I'm just going to add that to the pestle and mortar just because it's going to help me bash up the cardamom a bit. Okay, so just going to give that a quick grind it up. And what you should find is that the pods pop open and the little black seeds, black or brown seeds, come out. And I'm just going to flick those bits of skin out. It should be quite, just give it a shake and they kind of go to the top. And you'll be left with the seeds and a little bit of salt, and that can go in as well. Okay, now what have I still got to put in? 3 eggs. Yes, 3 eggs. Where are my eggs? Oh, down there. There they are. Thank you. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Brilliant. And that can just be mixed up like that. There we go. So you've got this lovely gloopy mass. It's got all your butter, your eggs, your spices, your sugar, your quince, your dried fruit. I'm just going through everything in my head to check I've remembered. And the one thing that I'm missing still is the flour. And I've just got 150 grams of self-raising flour. I'm going to have a sieve. I am going to sift this over. Now, there's a lot of talk about how sifting flour makes your cake lighter. I don't think it's really true. I think they've kind of done the science, and it doesn't make any difference from that point of view. I think it's a kind of hangover from Victorian times, or when actually your flour might have little weevils in and things that you wanted to get out. But what I do find is that sifting it kind of spreads the flour over the mixture a bit more evenly. And so I find that for something like this, where I'm trying not to work the flour too much, there is some sense in sifting, but I'm not doing it to make the cake lighter. That's not the way it works. Okay, so, right, so mix that up into a delicious gloopy mess. Yum, 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 yum. And stir, make a wish, make a wish, make a wish. Okay, done, done, done. Right. I can ask you what you're going to wish for, can't I? But then does it not come true if you tell? I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling. But I might have been wishing that we can all have a proper Christmas this year. And that It all will be well. I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be. Okay, and here is that tin I prepared earlier. Fantastic. So I'm just going to move some of my stuff out of the way. Whoops. What a good thing there's no camera down there, hey? Right. Ooh, okay, so now I'm going to put about half the mixture into my tin. Half or slightly over half, like that. And spread that out. And spread it out, there we go. Spread it out evenly. And then I'm going to put my layer of quince cheese in the middle. So paper side up, in it goes. And make it nice and central so that the mixture can cover it up at the edges. And then peel off the paper. There we go, that was easy. And in goes the rest of the mixture. Try not to drop it. That would look really bad. Okay, in it goes. In it goes. Right. Okay. Right, and just spread it out right up to the edges, reasonably evenly. And if there's any large bits of fruit at the top, try and kind of smear a bit of the cake mixture over the top so that it doesn't burn, so that they don't burn. Okay, so now you can make a little bit of a hollow in the middle, but don't make it very deep, because actually this cake rises fairly evenly. It doesn't do a great kind of doming thing, so you don't need to make a big hollow in the middle, which is what some recipes will tell you to do for some cakes, because on the whole you don't want a dome on the top of your cake. Although actually for the way that I'm going to decorate it today, the dome would be quite good. So there we go. Okay, so all done. Just wash my hands. Excuse me. Okay, brilliant. So that's all in, and that is now going in the oven. And we can move on to the marzipan. Okay. So there we go. Right, so marzipan, you can absolutely use, yes, those ones, thank you. You can absolutely use ordinary marzipan for this. You can buy marzipan from the shops and it will be fine, just, no problem at all. I'm going to make mine, I'm going to make it using hazelnuts because there's hazelnuts in the cake, and that seems like quite a nice thing to do. So this is how I'm going to do it. So I have got some ready roasted hazelnuts, which were chopped, and I'm just going to give them a little whiz. You can actually buy ready ground ones as well from some of the supermarkets, but when I went down to buy them, they'd sold out, so I'm using some chopped ones. And again, you could also absolutely use the ones in their skins, but just toast them in the oven first before you chop them, and rub the skins off. But I don't know if anyone else has found this, but quite a lot of things are kind of selling out, and I'm not sure. I think this happens every year, maybe, when everyone starts making mince pies and Christmas cakes and things. But maybe I'm just being paranoid because it seems like it's worse this year, but I'm not sure. Maybe what do you think? Am I imagining it? Or is it harder to get things? Like, I was going to use these beautiful red and yellow raisins in the cake. Can't get them anywhere. They've gone. So that's why I'm not using them. But you could completely use them if you can find them. Right, I am just looking for this. I'm just going to make a little noise now while I grind these down. Now, normally when you're grinding nuts, what you try not to do is make a paste out of them. So you have to be really careful. And I often say to people, put the nuts in the fridge before you grind them, and that will help them become more like a kind of powdery flour, which you're looking for. But actually, because you are making a paste this time, it doesn't matter so much. So I'm just going to grind these. Still a little bit knobbly. I think I wanted a little bit finer. I've just noticed someone suggested cardamom drops. That's genius. I've never come across those. Okay, that's looking better now. No, it's still a little bit gritty. Okay, so that's good. That's now ground down nicely. Oh, Valerie's just asking, did you cream the butter and sugar together earlier? No, I melted them all in the pan with the fruit and with the sloe gin and everything. So it's a melting method cake rather than a creaming method cake, which is just a bit easier and tends to make a sort of slightly denser but moister cake. Anyway, so I'm just adding, so that was 300 grams of hazelnuts. I'm just adding 100 grams of icing sugar and then 100 grams of caster sugar. You could use all icing sugar, but I think there's something with marzipan about that slight sort of granular, that slight crystalline quality that you want. So that's caster sugar and icing sugar. I'm just going to give those another whiz together. Okay. And it's coming together nicely. Just give it a little bit of a stir around. Don't do it like that with your hand because you might cut your hand on the blades. So it would be better to use a spoon or something. And then you just want a little bit of something sticky to hold it together. I've actually said in the recipe, I've said to use glucose because I'm using glucose in another recipe, and I kind of figured in another part of the recipe for the icing. And I sort of figured, well, if you bought your tube of glucose, you must use it for both things. But you could also, and which is quite nice for flavour, is you could use honey, because honey behaves like glucose in lots of ways. It's a similar kind of chemical structure. So you just want about 30 grams of honey in there. I'm just going to give that another. And then we just want about 50 grams of beaten egg, like that. And I've said 50 grams rather than the small egg because they can vary a lot, and you don't want too much egg in there because then the mixture will be too soft. But what you can also do is just add enough until you feel that the texture's right. Okay, this noisy bit's nearly over. Okay, and it's just beginning to come together. And when you feel, yeah, you see that's a bit sticky at the bottom, so I definitely don't want any more egg. And I said I wasn't going to use my hand anymore, didn't I? Just use one of these so you don't hurt yourself on the blades. There we go. And you're just going to check, and there you see that's definitely going to hold together now. So get rid of that. I've just got some in the fridge wrapped in foil. Thank you. It's so nice having a helper. There we go. So you basically now take this and just give it a quick knead so that it holds together. And that is your hazelnut marzipan. And just knead it slightly, wrapped in a disc, pat it into a disc and chill it in the fridge. And you'll end up with something like this. This is what I made earlier. And the thing about hazelnut marzipan is that it's a little bit more fragile. It doesn't hold together quite as beautifully as ordinary almond marzipan, which is why you add that little bit of honey or glucose to it. I forgot one more thing. A good thing I haven't finished wrapping it together. What I haven't said in the recipe, but since writing the recipe I've decided is a really nice thing, is a teaspoon of vanilla essence in with the hazelnut. And I think it tastes really nice if you just add that as well and mix that all in. I might ask the lovely, lovely people who look after the website to change the recipe to add a teaspoon of vanilla essence in there for you. It won't make that much difference, but I quite like it. So now you're ready to decorate your cake. Your cake's come out of the oven. I've just got one here. Magic. That appeared earlier. Let's brush down the surface. There we go. So there's my cake. And as you can see, it doesn't really dome that much at the top. It's quite flat. If I was being sort of wanting an absolute perfect kind of wedding cake, I would turn it over like that to decorate. So you had this perfect flat top. But in fact, for the style of cake that I'm doing, which is deeply not a sort of picture perfect kind of wedding cake type cake, I think it's absolutely fine just to keep it like that on the top. When it comes out of the oven, just use a fork or a skewer to skewer all over it and just drizzle over about 4 tablespoonfuls of sloe gin and let it cool in the tin with that sort of soaking in. And you can add more sloe gin later on as well if you want to, up to a couple more times, I think, and maybe just 2 tablespoonfuls at a time. You don't want it to be too soggy. Okay, so there you have your cake ready to go. The other thing you can do as well is if you're worried about it, is you can cut into it. You can do what Victorian housekeepers always did, which is to make a little cut and take out your slice. There we go. There it is. And just check that you're happy with it. There we go, which I am. And then just squish that back and nobody will know. Once you've all covered it with the marzipan and the icing and it's sat for a bit, it'll kind of heal itself. Although the other thing you can do is you can just put a little toothpick in where you've cut it and just leave that in just so that you know where the cut is. But sometimes that's reassuring because otherwise you just look at it and just say, no. Right. So I'm going to divide this into about half, this marzipan, and I am going to roll half out to cover the top of my cake. How are we doing for time? Uh-oh, I've run over time. Oh no! Oh no, oh no, oh no. I knew this would happen. Okay, so I'm going to do this really quickly. Okay, so you've got a circle like this. And what I'm not going to do is show you the making of the royal icing, because you can find lots and lots of directions for that online. And the only thing I would say is that I sometimes add a little bit of orange blossom water to the icing as I'm making it, just to sort of scent it a little bit. Okay, so just rolling that out. There we go. And that goes on top. You can see it's slightly more fragile than normal almond marzipan, but it's fine. It will work absolutely fine. You can just squidge it on like that. There we go. Oh, it's also quite sticky because of the honey. So you can get away without brushing it with jam first. It's more traditional to brush the cake with jam before you start, but because of its sort of slight sticky fragility, you don't have to do that. But you absolutely can as well if you prefer, or you can brush it with honey as well. Okay, so then I'm going to roll the rest into a sort of sausage shape, like this, and just roll that out to go around the edge. And that, okay. Just press that round, join the ends. And once you've put the marzipan on, what you really need to do is cover it with a cloth and then leave it on the side in your kitchen ideally for about a week. And that's just so that it dries out on the outside and the oils from the marzipan don't then seep into your lovely white icing. But just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to ice straight onto it. Okay, there we go. This marzipan is so delicious. Yum. The other thing you could do if you were using this marzipan, maybe not for this cake, but for if you were using it for another kind of cake, is you could add some cocoa powder for it. So you've got kind of like a hazelnut chocolate marzipan. And you can also, if you have any marzipan left over, you can roll it into balls, coat it in chocolate, or just, or make marzipan fruit with it. That's a really lovely thing to do with children. Just pressing it out. Just, oh. Roll. There we go. Okay. Right, just pressing it out. Okay. So, obviously, you will do this much more beautifully than I'm doing it, but you get the idea. And you just go around smoothing it until you have covered all your cake with marzipan. Okay, so, and then to decorate it, I've just made some, yeah, there it is, brilliant. Some royal icing here, which is, all it is egg whites beaten up a little bit, and then you beat in gradually your lovely icing sugar. And then it will set to that lovely sort of hard texture. And I think that's the thing for me about icing. I do think it's a bit sweet, but I love that kind of crisp texture that it gives to a Christmas cake, which otherwise can be a bit of a kind of soft thing. So I'm going to wash my hands so I don't want to leave this on my cake. Okay, there we go. And with a palette knife, you just want to spread this over. Now, if you're doing a sort of beautiful, perfect cake, you'll do one thin layer and then you'll do a second thin layer, and you'll wipe it several times to get rid of the air bubbles, because you do get little air bubbles in this. But for this, I'm just not going to worry. This is going to be fine, because this is all about making a cake that you want to just cut into and eat. It's not something that you think is too perfect to cut into. And to decorate it, I'm going to use some rosemary, which I've just dipped in egg white and then rolled in sugar and then just laid on a tray to dry. And okay, so just gonna squish. Now this makes quite a lot of icing. You could actually, if you're quite experienced with using icing, you could probably get away with a 2 egg white quantity. This is a 3 egg white quantity. There we go. Ooh, can't see the front, which is what you can all see. Try and do that. There we go. So you literally just spread it over like that. No need to be perfect and beautiful, because part of the joy of this cake is that it's not perfect and beautiful. There we go. And then I'm just going to use the tip of the palette knife just to make sort of concentric circles, and also just to make ridges just round the cake like that, a bit like a ribbon going round. There we go. And then to decorate that, I've got candles. Now these are just night lights, and I've stacked them up. So I've stacked up 3, and I've stacked up 2, and then I've just got 1. And I've just stuck them together with bits of masking tape, my favourite thing. And I'm just going to wrap them in a bit of tin foil, like this. Okay, wrap them in tin foil. And there we go. And then you can just wrap them in some more of your icing, which, where should I put my icing when I finished with it? It's one of those days I found it. Yay. So we're just going to just spread the icing around them, just to coat them in it. Don't go over the top because you don't want the icing to get into the candle because it would burn then. Okay, so that's partly done, and I'm just going to push it up. There we go, like that. This one I'm just going to do straight up. Spread it around. Yeah, there we go. Like that. And last one. Now, just wondering where my rosemary is that I covered in sugar. Oh, it's on the table next door. There we go. Yes, here it is. Thank you. There we go. So I'll just wrap those around. Now, just going to add a little bit more now that they're actually in situ, just to cover up coating. Obviously, you can take a little bit more time doing this than I'm spending. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to, oh, thank you. That's my rosemary. I'm just going to take a little bit of this icing. Thank you. And just add a few drops of water, just a tiny bit, just to thin it down. And mix that up with a teaspoon, just to make a slightly runnier texture. And then that is what's going to make the drips of wax around the edge. And I'm just going to use the tip of the handle just to run, and that's what makes them look like candles, just to run the drips down. And those, with a bit of luck, you may have to play with the texture a bit, will be your kind of drips, your wax drips on your candle. Okay, there we go. And around that, I'm going to put the rosemary, which I put down again. I'm useless. Oh, here it is, I've got it. So here we have the rosemary, which I just dipped in egg white and then in sugar. And this is sugar which I added a little bit of gold glitter to, but you could also use golden caster sugar, which gives another sort of lovely colour to it. Just going to put that round, and I've just dried it so it's sort of slightly curved, just so that it will go round the edges of my cake, like this. And then I just need some more hazelnuts. There we go. Brilliant, some hazelnuts and that gold spray. And just to finish it, I've just got a few hazelnuts here. You could also cover cranberries with sugar, and that's really nice as well. But the only thing about that is that they won't hold. They'll keep for like a couple of days, but then they start weeping. Whereas you can do this, you know, a week or 2 weeks in advance, and it will be absolutely fine. I've just got gold spray. It's just gold glitter spray, you know, for food. This one came from Sainsbury's, but all the supermarkets are doing them. I know Waitrose does one. I'm just giving my hazelnuts a little bit of glitter. You know what? I think that's a cheeky peanut that's found its way into my hazelnuts. Can that really be true? Anyway, there we go. And then I'm just going to pop the hazelnuts around and pile them around. And there it is. Your cake, your quince cake with rosemary and hazelnut. And here's one I did earlier. I'm not going to light the candles because it'll make it go. But there you have it. Quince and hazelnut cake. And I'm really sorry it was so rushed at the end, but thank you so much for joining me.